I'm here. I'm ready. We're ready. Hello. Welcome once again, everyone, to Community Conversations. This is episode 9, and we are asking ourselves after a lot of, let me see, last week alone was paralyzing. It was a bit traumatic, as you can see by my popping hands. that let's just say last week got a little bit weird and on top of everything else going on with 2020, so we're here with a dynamic panel tonight. Your our wonderful co-host, Mr. Mika Catchings. But we got some folks right here in the community today, and we're going to be asking ourselves essentially, I think, what we all want to know. Now what?
Right.
And I think that's very clear and present to actually say, because I think we've learned a lot about ourselves, or not, in 2020, but enough to know that how we move forward is essential to everything. Would you agree with that, Tamika?
I always agree with you, Eric.
Oh, would you agree that I'm wearing a button up and sweatpants so I can be ready to go into gym teacher mode?
Would you agree that I am in the same? But I was gonna get dressed up, but then I was like, you
Got
know
you.
what? Let me just put my Tease Me shirt on. I can never go wrong
Never go
with my
wrong
Tease
with the
Me shirt.
brand. There you
Yeah,
go.
all about that. Tease Me.
Put a plug in for your business there. You're a smart lady,
You
You
smart
got
lady.
know,
to. You got to.
these are actually called the Tease Me Community Conversations, and I'm excited because way back when in June, and actually Eric and I we got together. We used to do the first Friday at Tease Me Cafe every single month. Chantel and Eric would lead, and it was amazing just being in the space. However, we are upon like COVID is upon us, and so we are really trying to figure out how to move forward. And as we started looking at just what we wanted to do, one of the big things when George Floyd killing and just thinking about all the social injustice, the racial tension, a lot of things that were going on across not even just the US, across the world. And for us, it really was about the opportunity. What can we do here in Indianapolis to continue making a difference, to continue talking about issues, social issues that affect all of us? And so this is where we are, like Eric said, episode number 9.
Yeah.
And we're excited because we have a great panel, a great panel. We're going to have an amazing conversation. As is, before I get into that, everybody that's watching us on Facebook, thank you guys for tuning in. If you have questions as we're going through this, make sure that you put it in the chat. We will allow to move some of those questions into our conversation, and we're just gonna have fun. Are you guys ready to have some fun? I'm ready to have some fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I've been waiting for this all day. I
Let's,
cannot lie. I woke up this morning
right.
thinking
Let's
about the
bring some
community
fun to
conversation.
Friday the 13th. Things can't get
I
weird.
know, right? Friday the 13th.
All right.
Now, were you afraid, or are you a man of faith? Were you afraid of this day, or were you like, come on, let's come, bring it on?
Senator Jane, I'm not worried about no Friday the 13th.
Right on.
Shoot, as much as we
Take
done
them
been through.
down.
Right on.
I wish Friday the 13th would.
Wouldn't
Don't
even
want to mess
try,
with
right?
Eric.
Wouldn't even
So
try.
let's
I
go
got you.
through. Let's go through real fast. Let's make sure. I want everybody to know who we have on our panel because this is going to be a great time. We're going to have a lot of fun. So, Gene, we'll start with you. Senator Gene, who
All
are
right.
you?
Well, thank you so very much for the invitation to participate in this conversation. If you know anything about politicians, you know we like to conversate, and we do that very well. And so I think this is great to have this topic of where do we go from here, because I absolutely think that that's a pertinent question. But more importantly, I want to kind of go back to last week where, when our democracy was on the brink of being totally obliterated by this administration and this current man in the White House who refuses to leave. Folks from all over America came out in numbers that have never been seen before. And Black folks came out in numbers like never before. And I just, people have a tendency to underestimate people of color, underestimate young people, but we understand and we know when things are being threatened and when our livelihoods and our way of life is being threatened, no matter how bad it is, it's still something worth fighting for. And we came out and we fought for it. And I just want to thank everyone that participated in the elections. Thank everyone that stood in those lines and that put themselves at risk by going out because they didn't want to mail in their ballot because this administration had made you so fearful of what the mail-in process would look like. So they came out in droves. And I'm just so proud of America, and I'm so proud of the folks in Indiana that came out. Now we're still a very red state. So we have a lot of work to do, but at least I don't care what you are, at least you participated in the process, and that's all you can ask for. So I was just really very proud of America, and again, very proud of people of color because we saved once again, we helped save this country. So it's about time that we start getting something back from this country, and it's given us a lot, no doubt. But certainly it's time to sort of spread that out amongst more and more people of color across this nation. So anyway, I'm sorry. Was I supposed to say something about myself? My name is Jean Bro. I'm sorry, I forgot the question. My name is Jean Bro, and I'm a state senator for Indianapolis District 34, which is the sort of the center. I have Center Township going all the way east to the Hancock-Marion County line. So I have quite a number of districts, but it's a heavily gerrymandered district. So that means that the politicians are selecting the people that you have to vote for. Politicians are determining who you can vote for. So they put me in a gerrymandered district, which means it's all well, we can talk about that later. But anyway, I'm Jean Bro, and I'm proud to be on this conversation, and I try to represent you at the State House and the Indiana Senate.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Amelia, would you like to follow that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll try. My name is Amelia Pack Harvey. I'm a reporter with the Indianapolis Star. I cover the city or city government, I guess. I previously covered public education in Las Vegas. Oh. And I came here in January. So probably the worst time to try and get to know a city. I've been trying to learn a little bit, but it's been a little bit hard with quarantine and whatnot. But in the 11 months, I guess, that I've been here, I've learned a lot and still learning.
And you've learned that public education needs a lot of assistance. Have you?
Yes, definitely. Especially out in Las Vegas, but yeah, everywhere.
Well, in Indiana, especially too.
Everywhere. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you for joining us. Alex, I'm going to come to you real quick. I know you're in the middle of drawing. But can you flip around a little bit so we can see you?
Let me see here. Give me a second. Not the most technologically savvy, but
it's all good. We live in the internet now.
Hi everyone. My name is Alex, and I'm an artist here in Indianapolis.
Yay!
Yeah, and my brand image is basically drawing, people, but without their faces. So I try to make
Friday
it
the 13th,
very realistic.
Right?
Say that again?
Friday the 13th, right?
I know. Exactly. I mean, hopefully not, but, and I mean, like you were saying, like how Tease Me conversations started with like Black Lives Matter movement and like the killing of George Floyd. I've been trying to use my platform to, be more impactful and like draw more things that are kind of difficult to talk about. Like my audience is pretty broad. I have a lot of like a younger demographics. So I just try to like convey my feelings and like how I feel about the situation just through my art. And it's pretty like self-explanatory. And it's just been awesome to see other artists doing the right thing and also, using their talents to just, kind of beautify the city or like just spread some positivity. So it's been awesome, and just trying to do my best to do the same.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. It's interesting. I know we got to get to Marshawn and Dee, but this is an interesting story. So I actually met one of Alex's family members. I was a poll
Yep,
worker
yeah.
last week at Baker's Life Fieldhouse, and one of her family members actually came up and was like, "Oh, you know, it's I don't know if it was your
It's
sister-in-law."
my sister. Yeah, my
Yeah,
sister Paulina.
my sister was like, she just drew something on you, and just around the corner. And I was like, okay, but I was in the middle of like ushering people, and she was like, well, here, take a look at it. And so when I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Make sure that connect us through social media. So all of this, like Alex and I literally just met, not really met, but just met through social media last Friday, and she agreed to jump on. So
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
excited. Yeah.
That's
All right. So Marshawn, who are you?
So my name is Marshawn Wally. I am here as president and CEO of Black Onyx Management. It is a management consulting company focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. When you think of onyx, onyx is a stone that attracts negative energy and then projects positive energy from that negative energy.
Ooh.
And it's black. And my company's black. And I'm unapologetically black, and I'm an unapologetically black business owner. Part of the reason why I used the benefit corporation formation was I had the opportunity to, within my articles of incorporation, say that I was going to empower Black and marginalized communities as a part of my business operations. So that has been manifest in a program called Black Businesses Matter, where we have invested in promoting Black businesses, really kind of telling their story. So if you look in the recorder this week, you'll see a profile of businesses that have been featured. We've done podcasts for them. We've actually developed a clean that you can put on a brick and mortar or put on a website so that folks can easily see it. We're doing power shifting conversations. Power shifting is one of my corporate values, where we're trying to change really power dynamics. And so we're introducing these business owners to power brokers like Camille Ferguson with the city, or Angela Smith-Jones when she was the deputy mayor, or the gentleman that runs the Department of Workforce Development. And so that's really what my company is about, or at least this company. I have a couple of other ventures as well. I'm also involved in public affairs. And so we are on Monday, you're going to hear about a youth commission that my organization's been working on that's focused on system impacted youth. We also supported the development of the Indianapolis Commission on African American Males and providing the research and the structure for that. So I am very much happy to be here, and I feel like I got a jacket on and all that, and like a business, but I am generally a business oriented type person, so it fits my personality, even on a Friday night. That's how I am. So.
Good, all good. And last we have Mr. Go ahead, brother, Mr. Ross. Lay the
Hey
sauce.
everyone, I'd like to first apologize for the technical difficulties, but I'm here now. So my name is Dee Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of the Ross Foundation, a grassroots organization whose mission is to take the community out of survival mode into thriving mode by creating effective youth programs, repairing our communities, and developing leaders. I was born and raised on 42nd and Post Road on the Far East Side. Used to be a leader of a gang on Post Road, changed my whole life around, lost 45 friends to gun violence. And so that really activated my ability to lead at an early age in a negative way, but now I'm doing it in a positive way. And so I'm more of you may see me in the forefront of protests or demonstrations or leading community conversations as I guess a lot of people call me the voice of the streets or a grassroots leader. And so, yeah, also I was one of the youngest to ever run for city county council last year. And unfortunately, I didn't win, but we did help increase a lot of voter education across the spectrum of Marion County.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you for being here. I think today is an important conversation to have. One of the things we talked about last month, and Eric kind of touched on this already, is just getting people out to vote, and the importance of getting people, use your platform, get your voices heard. This is your time, and all of that. Well, the votes are in, and I know they're still counting. So I have like the anxiety even with that. that they're still counting. But I think the question really becomes, you know, going into just the voting, what were your initial thoughts about where we were as a nation? Thinking about just Tuesday, this past Tuesday, like what was the workup for each one of you in your individual path?
Can I just say something that doesn't answer your question?
Of course.
That would be just so right for me, right? I just wanted to say a couple of things, one about Alex and one about Dee. About Alex, just how important it is really to have art be a representation of the times. And I really hope that you do take your art into a direction that tells the story of what's happening now. When I was in college, I took art history, and I was always so amazed at, you could always kind of get an idea of what was happening at the time that painting was done by the representation of what was in that painting. So I hope you will tell the story of now through your art, Alex, and I would love to see that. And Dee,
Absolutely.
Dee, when I was younger, I had there was an event at my church, and they had former gang members there, and they were talking to us and sort of telling us about their experiences and what got them where they were, and so on and so forth. Anyway, they laid out the organization, and I tell you that they had, you know, they identified positions that people held. It was like an organization. I mean, they had an organization chart, and it was run like an organization. Only it was an organization of the streets. And I always said, those are some of the brightest people that if we can just get them redirected, energies redirected in a different place, they will be outstanding leaders. And it sounds like you are a perfect example of that, that you were headed in one direction, which is the same talent that is leading you now in the direction that you're going in a more positive way. So congratulations on that turn.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so question, ask your question again, Tamika.
I forgot it.
Where do we go from here? I think is what you said. The votes are in. The votes are in, and how did we kind of get there? All I can say is that as an elected official, along with Dee and others like him, you know, we just did what we could to try to educate folks on the importance of voting, even though sometimes it appears that it doesn't matter and that your vote doesn't matter. It absolutely does, because the leadership matters. And if you get the wrong leadership because you don't vote, then you will see your services go away. You will see your income shrink. You will see opportunities leave. And so leadership does matter. And even though you may not yourself be running for a particular office, it's very important that you educate yourself on who is running and make sure that you select those folks or vote for those folks that are going to actually try to make the difference that you need in your life or you need to see in your community. So leadership matters, and voting matters, and educating yourself about leaders matters. And so that's how I got there.
And so for me, I think the biggest takeaway for me was, yes, I was excited that we got 45 out of office, but also I was disappointed with the Black community, because a lot of people fell into the shenanigans that was happening on the national level and said, you know what, I'm not showing up to vote. I'm not showing up to the polls because I don't want to vote for Trump or Biden, and not knowing that it's not just about national elections, it's about local elections as well, that impacts you directly. And so a lot of people was confused on that, especially in Black and brown communities across the spectrum, because they didn't feel like Biden can do anything for them or Trump. And so why vote? And so I had to do, and others had to do a lot of educating on why it's important to show up to vote, especially on a local level, because this determines how your community looks right now. This determines why schools is closing down. This determines why you have food deserts. All these different factors that is systematically keeping us oppressed. You know, this is how you make sure your voice is heard, is getting out to vote and being the change you want to see in your community. It's not complaining on social media. That's not going to get the job done. It's actually exercising your right to vote, and also doing your research, not just going in voting straight ticket, do your research on what candidates best represent your district, your community, who addresses your needs and concerns directly. And then you'll start to see a lot of things change and transition in your community.
So for me, I appreciated watching folks like Dee and Senator Bro go out and try to educate voters. I know I participated in some of that myself. What was shocking to me on Tuesday night and then Wednesday morning and Thursday was that over 70 million people voted for 45. And he likely got a more diverse cross-section of voters than any Republican has ever gotten. His percentage on Black women, even though I think the thought is that Black women saved us as far as like showing up and turning out to vote, their percentage doubled in voting for Trump. And then Black men, it was almost 17, 18%. And it just kind of surprised me. And then you look at the Latinx community. In fact, the only group that went down was white men. And so we're still counting the numbers, and we're going to see how that plays out. When I'm thinking about like what's next, I wrote about this recently, the need to think about redistricting, because this was a decennial election or a decennial year where they do the census. And so part of what happens now is the General Assembly as well as the City County Council are going to start looking at these districts, these gerrymandered districts that we were talking about a little bit before the start of the show. And what happens is elected officials basically get to choose their voters as opposed to voters choosing them. Indiana has maybe the most among the most lax laws when it comes to redistricting. They don't have to think about partisan balance. They don't have to make the districts competitive. They don't have to think about political boundaries or communities of concern.
Communities of interest.
Yeah, so it's and last time, if we want to tell the truth, at the city council level, the Republicans drew the maps, even though the Democrats were supposed to draw the maps, but the maps ended up working out for the local Democratic Party anyway. There's now 20 Democrats on the city county council as opposed to, what they had before. So I'm really concerned about the maps, because that's going to be that could be a potential game changer for the next 10 years. And so I'm thinking about that like real heavy right now.
Well, and you should, because in the Indiana legislature, for example, the Indiana Senate, we have 11 members out of 50. We're in the super minority. I mean, we don't really even have to show up and be on the floor to have bills be enacted. And in the House, they lost about 5 members, maybe picked up 1, so they lost a total of 4. So that puts them in the, I don't know if it's a super minority, but they're certainly in the minority. And so, it's almost as if the Democratic Party is fading away here in Indiana. And, that should concern everyone, because no matter what side you're on, you need to have at least a balanced discussion. You need to have people who are able to present an alternative view. And when you have such numbers, it's almost as though the voice is suppressed because it doesn't need to be heard. They have so many, they can just walk right over us. I did want to point out something that you may not know, Marshawn and others, but in the Indiana Senate, we had leadership elections. Now, I was a assistant minority leader, but unfortunately I got I didn't run, I withdrew, but I'm no longer, I got replaced by an African-American male. So that's good. Senator Eddie Melton is now the assistant minority leader of the Indiana Senate Democrat Caucus. And we have the first African-American male as the leader of the Senate Minority Caucus, which means he is the equivalent of the president pro tem in the Senate, and he's the equivalent of the Speaker of the House. So he's the highest ranking Democrat in the state of Indiana, and it's an African-American male by the name of Senator Greg Taylor, for those of you that may or may not know him. And we also picked up Fadi Kador, who is the first Muslim American to represent Indiana in the state. So we have great diversity happening in our Senate Democrat caucus, but we just need more numbers. and the numbers are hampered by the maps, as Marshawn said, because I can never ever remember that, but the maps are drawn so that the politicians select the people that they want to vote for them. And we are at a redistricting moment, and we're going to have a press conference. The Senate Democrats are going to have a press conference led by Senator Taylor on Tuesday, which is the first day of Organization Day at the State House. So I encourage you to come out or to follow us. I don't know if they stream or what they're going to do, but certainly it will be an opportunity for you to try to go to our website, indianasenatedemocrats.com, and you'll find information out about the redistricting press conference on Tuesday. But we're very concerned about the maps. That's the budget, and the maps are really the only thing that we have to do this legislative session. And we're very concerned because the Republicans have control of both chambers, so that means they will draw the maps. And the tendency is, and I won't say that it's any different for Democrats, but certainly we've seen that the tendency of the Republicans is to draw those maps favorable to them and unfavorable to Democrats, which is why I am in a very heavily gerrymandered district. They stack and pack all they put all one kind of group together. And it doesn't matter how far up and down the state you go, if they need to draw you from Indianapolis all the way up to Newcastle, which we do have a district like that, where he lives actually in Indianapolis, but he covers all the way up in Newcastle. And that's because if they drew it really in a consecutive way based on where he lived, he would have to, it would be a competitive district, and it would probably go Democrat because there's so many Democrats where he lives. So they took the little part where he lives that's Democrat, and then they added all of these Republicans to it so that there was no way he could ever be defeated by a Democrat, or it's very unlikely. So gerrymandered districts, gerrymandered maps are a real problem for democracy and for having a meaningful conversation at the legislature that is truly representative of the people. I think there are a lot more people that think like Democrats than there are in the House and the Senate, but that's because the maps are intended to have our voices stuffed.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is when I'm looking at this issue, it's obviously a partisan issue. There's some politics into that, but I'm also thinking about when you go to the General Assembly and you start talking to politicians and they don't have a critical mass of Black people in their district, they don't have to listen to you, or they're less likely to listen to you. And so when I'm thinking about the maps, it's about making sure that there's a critical mass of Black folks in each of these districts, so that when we go and advocate for things, they're more likely to listen because you can swing their election.
Right now, because you guys have provided a whole lot of context, and I want to make sure we are able to situate through that. Amelia, I had reached out to you. Well, I'm glad Tamika we reached out because I saw you represented from the media standpoint, and for the last couple of years, the only thing we've heard about is false news and really a downplay of the media in a way in which we've never really ever really seen before. So again, just kind of when you were going into the election, what were your thoughts, and what are your thoughts again on how many people exercise their right to vote?
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree with Dee more about folks getting to know their local races. As a reporter, one thing that irks me is, when I'm talking to family members or something, that the first thing asked me is, oh, so what do you think about the presidential race? And I'm usually not, or even a Senate race is, at the national level. And I'm usually, as a reporter, not ingrained in those races. I'm ingrained in the hyperlocal stuff, which, to be honest, I try and tell my friends, like, that's going to matter more than, it's still important that you vote in every race. And I also do try and encourage if they can, unless they do align with a straight party ticket, to really consider all aspects of the both sides of the aisle. Maybe there's a Republican member of school board that you would really admire and you like his or her goals, or maybe there's a Democratic, state senator that you really like what they've been doing in the state house. So I think that with all of the issues around Trump, people aren't really thinking about who should I vote for IPS school board. And as a former education reporter, I'm always going to look up all the candidates and what they think about. But yeah, that is one thing. I think as a reporter too, personally, the fake news stuff, that's been, gaining steam over the years. People are particularly nastier to media now. And I think I go to some events like expecting to be lashed out at. But that's very much changed from when I was fresh out of college and first started the job. I didn't expect, 5 times out of 10 to have someone lash out at me. I didn't expect rude, emails, voicemails, all this stuff. But that's really, I've noticed that, more often. And I think I've noticed the voicemails that people leave me is more hyper partisan, and I get it from both sides. Just accusing me of being, either a fascist or a communist, depending on where they are in this, on the spectrum. So I kind of just tell them whatever you think I am, like, that's fine. Like, I don't know what changes from day to day, apparently. So that's been getting kind of rougher, particularly with the climate right now. But folks in Indiana are very nice still, even if they have some of those comments. I've never worked in a state. I also worked in Massachusetts and as well as Nevada, and this is the nicest state by far. I could go up to somebody and say,
Really?
they are so nice, even if they don't agree with you, even if they want to call you fake news. So that's nice. I haven't had kind of a.
I lived in Massachusetts for a number of years and spent time going back and forth between Massachusetts and New York. And I remember I sat on a plane once next to a New Yorker, and she was really very nice. And I said, well, that's not, you don't have a reputation for being nice in New York. New York are brusque and rude and abrupt. And she said, I was born and raised in New York. I'm a native New Yorker. It's all those other people. It's those transplants that come to New York to try to make it rich and make it big. They give us a bad name. So, but do you attribute the way people are treating you towards to Donald Trump and
I think it's a combination of factors. It's definitely the government in the past, few years. And then also, like, on a national spectrum, the decline of local media outlets as a result, just kind of like we at the Indianapolis Star just had buyouts this week that you might have seen people leaving. So the decline of local media has fed everyone to focus strictly on, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. That's it. ABC. That's it. And people don't like to read as much anymore. My generation, the millennial generation, is not the reading generation. We're like scrolling through Instagram and just liking all these photos, and even the generations before us, like our
short sentences.
They have like a 3-second time span. So that is and the way that social media is set up is kind of polarizing, I think, in addition to all the national media and figures, and day by day, with the Trump administration, you're not really sure what to expect next. So both of those things just kind of compounding into this perfect, force. Because when people say fake news or the media or the mainstream media, I just don't, I think those people don't read any of their local newspapers, even like Indianapolis Recorder, Indy Star. Like, that's where you're going to find the people who are like literally in your streets doing the work. You can watch the talking heads on CNN if you want, but they're not going to know your community like your local paper, I guess. So both of those things. It's a tough time to be in news, for sure.
And I think you bring up a very good point, Amelie, because again, we're just kind of, the culture is just contextualized by what's simple, what's easy, what's quick, and the bad thing about it is, people are developing, opinions in this mindset and in this state of mind, and opinions to where again, you are making decisions for entire communities. So as again, it came up then about the local elections and how we don't focus on that. And shout out to my brother Russell Hollis, who was here last month, and deputy director downtown at the city clerk's office. I tip my hat off to him because he was constantly bombarded with the early voting. I thought about going to go early vote. I really did. I went downtown. I'm talking about the early vote. I'm about the early vote. Stroll. What's that song on Saturday Night Live? Strolling to the polls. I don't know if you
Yeah, I
guys saw
tried
those.
to. Not for no
Stroll to the
3 hour wait
polls.
though. I was like, I'm
Right,
gonna
but
wait
then I
till
got
I
right. I
get
got
there.
that. I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and wait till Tuesday, and I waited my hour and a half. But what then? Aside for of the presidential election, what were some of the things that you guys personally focused on as it pertained to local elections and why?
Boards, school boards. I was all about school boards, calling schools out for the racial achievement gap. We have one school district in Washington. Well, I ain't gonna call them out. We trying to be cool now. We're trying to be cool now. But they had a 48% gap between white student performance and black student performance. So we had a meeting. We went to go talk to them with a number of my friends in the civil rights organizations. And now they have a plan. They have an equity plan. They've hired some folks, and they're working on it. And they actually, they were forthright and said, "We got a problem. We know we got to fix it." But one of the things that I am hoping to see, and I think may have occurred, I think we may have had more Black people run for school board than previous years. I know I was beating the drum on that because, that's critical. But that was really one of the races that's really the race I showed up to. I was one of those folks that wasn't really excited about either one of the top presidential candidates. So I showed up for school board races.
I think to carry off that gentrification conversation, I was assigned the state house races, Fatty Cadora's district, those that were substantial challenges from Democrats, that had substantial challenges from Democrats. And I don't cover the state house, typically my role is city council, but I think it's going to be interesting for me, especially in this redistricting time, to see. When I got here, we were fresh off last year's municipal elections, and I think Democrats were just I think both parties were stunned about the supermajority that they got on the city council. And so one thing that they told me, as a point of pride, is that even after we were, gerrymandered, we're slowly becoming more blue. At the state level, again, not my expertise and not my beat, but I am curious to see how that plays out over time. If even after, can you redistrict your way out of this? This kind of like blue, I called it like a blue creep, but that has a negative connotation, just a blue, leak, I guess, out of the center, and then going a little bit in the surrounding counties like Fishers, Carmel, all that stuff. So that will be interesting for me for years to come, to see if Indy, since now we're like the super majority blue, see if that translates at the state level. And I think even though, Republicans can effectively just run the state as it is now without any input from the other side of the aisle, I am curious to see how the council continues, especially now the supermajority, to be that, I don't want to say antagonizing force, but just a force of offering another perspective or pointing out things that they're upset with. I guess that always runs the risks of the state creating a law that then, kind of limits their authority. But that's just what I'm interested in as a new person.
Well, I think that's an interesting perspective because the state is, as you go from Indianapolis out, we are starting to see more of those outlining communities trending Democrat. We're seeing Hamilton County and Fishers trending. We're getting more Democrats there, and we're getting a shot. We came close in a couple of the House races with Democrat candidates. If we can, I think that's why I believe that there are more of us, that more folks in Indiana that think like Democrats than is indicated by the numbers in the state house. And I think if we can get good candidates and we can get the folks to invest financially so that we can, and unfortunately, I would hope that one day we would do something to address financing of elections, because I think it's getting ridiculous how much it costs in just a local election to get elected, how much money it takes. And that shouldn't be, that's again, another barrier, another way to discriminate, because some folks have easier access to money than others. But nonetheless, as we get good candidates, I believe that you're going to start to see us be able to pick up seats. Now they're going to try to react by pushing the districts farther and farther up, but there's only so far you can go, because you have to stay in Indiana. And so I think at some point, they're not going to be able to redistrict their way out of it, because the numbers of where people have chosen to locate, since we can now locate anywhere, it's going to have more and more representation from the other side, and that's going to show up in elections. And if we can get good candidates and we can get the message out, I think that you'll start to see us picking up in Lawrence, for example, the Geist area. That was a pretty close race. And Jim Merritt is in the seat now. And I understand there's an African-American female running to fill that seat. But Lawrence is trending much more Democrat, and you're having a much more Democrat activity going on. In Hamilton County, you're seeing much more. We're in Boone County. So I think you're going to, no matter how much they try to redistrict, we're everywhere, and those numbers are going to start to show up. It's going to take some time. It's not going to happen in the next election cycle or even the one after that. But I don't think they're going to be able to redistrict their way out of this, because there's only so far they can go, and there's only so much coverage they can get before they have to start overlapping and getting into areas where they're going to absolutely have to have some representation there, and they're going to try to do it, but they're going to find that there are a lot of Democrats there.
Well, let me go ahead and rebound real quick.
There are all these new developments too, going up in some of these suburban areas. And a lot of those
me
folks
for the
moving
rebound.
in.
I got you.
A lot of those folks moving in are going to be Democrats. All right, Eric, I'm done.
Look, I said, okay, look, I will wrestle this ball with you, Senator Jean.
Just want to say something.
I want to pass it to Dee Ross, and I'm gonna throw you alley oop, Dee, because to your point, Senator Jean. I love
that, Senator Jean. I love that.
Dee Ross, again, we just so happen to cross paths here in the city. And I think what you're speaking about again, and I'm seeing again, this new mindset, this shift, and just kind of knowing, again, him telling his story, working on the far east side, operating out of the far east side. And so again, that question, again, your focus on the election period, again, I'm very curious to see what your focus was outside of the presidential race.
Well, I'm surprised nobody brought up the times we're living in America right now.
Oh, we're gonna get to it. We're gonna get to it.
Well, yeah. That's why I'm about to. No, I'm not saying that we're not going to talk about it, but as far as my focus, keep in mind we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're hurting right now. Still dealing with mental health trauma across the spectrum, from police brutality and from so many different systems that has continually kept us oppressed and from thriving for over 400 years. And so I felt I sat on a few panels, and I hosted my own grassroots conversation on the Indianapolis Recorder, because I felt like it was so much in-party fighting on both parties, party versus party. And it really, from the outside looking in, you think it's like a gang versus a gang at one point. And so a lot of people was looking for different solutions, different answers, different leaders to rise up to speak about why it's important to vote, why it's necessary that you go out and vote, how your vote directly impacts you. And breaking down the local elections from the judges. A lot of people don't know about the judges. They was up for I think what retention, and so it's a lot of you got the city councilors, you got the mayors, you got the governors, you got the senators, you got the state reps. A lot of people, different people was up for elections, but re-elections, but a lot of people cannot find information on a lot of these candidates. And so I did a lot of that, a lot of my year to this year of standing in that gap of trying to reach the ones who's directly impacted the most, specifically Black and Brown communities, where voter turnout is the lowest, especially on the far east side of Indianapolis. But before I get into everything I did this year, I think we need to really speak on the reason why people don't believe their vote matters. And if you think about it, I was one of those people at one point who grew up on 42nd and Post, the biggest food desert right now in the Midwest, no grocery store. We have the poorest reading literacy rate when John Marshall closed down in the state, but we don't have a library on 42nd and Post. We are number 2 in evictions in the entire state. We were number 2 in the country, Indianapolis, behind New York City in evictions filed. And so it's so many different disparities of, okay, when I did vote, I still lived in poverty. I still struggle. I still had to put food on the table. I still didn't get quality education, and so many different barriers, we could go into that people on the ground believe that their vote don't matter strongly. And so that's what spurred me to, okay, we need to have a grassroots conversation about voting versus a Democratic Party or Republican Party or a Libertarian Party or Independent Party. No, we didn't want to. We wanted to be nonpartisan and have just a American conversation, grassroots conversation, just as a human being, what it means to vote and how it impacts you directly, and not persuading you to vote either way. We just wanted them to know, like, where you could find information about your candidates, where you could do research at, and how it impacts your neighborhood, your backyard. And so what I'm saying is it's a lot of healing that needs to be restored in our communities. We're hurting, we're in pain. It's a lot of hope that has been lost out of our communities. And so we have to restore those gaps, more importantly, because even if you do voter education and they're so traumatized or desensitized to the pain because they already lost everything. They thinking in their minds, like, what else can I lose? I already lost it all. I'm already in survival mode. And so we have to be real intentional when we talking about moving forward. Where do we go from here? We have to really create concrete solutions and making sure equity and quality is improving across the spectrum, and not just talking about it. When a police brutality incident happens, we have to hold people accountable. If you're in a position of leadership, then you're in a position to be held accountable. And whether you like it or not, that's what you signed up for. And so that's just my take on things. I mean, and it's not just the Far East side. It's all across Indiana, across the country. So many different disparities that continue to be overlooked, and and sometimes people could focus on more on the party than they could focus on the community. And so that goes back to when I ran my campaign. I always said, don't the political agenda need to be a community agenda? Thank you.
Well, can I just speak to that, Eric? Because
Please.
You have hit on something as a legislator that for me is the biggest emotional challenge that I face as a Black legislator, and I represent the East Side and the Far East Side. And that is that there are just so many battles that need to be fought. And you're out there trying to, I'm trying to, right, I'm going to have a bill this session that deals with incarceration of minors in adult courts. That happens all the time, and it shouldn't happen. And so, and most of those kids that get incarcerated are our children. We're looking at I'm trying to do a screening bill because health disparities are really rampant among people of color. They have more amputees due to diabetes. They suffer more from diabetes. They're more obese. So that's an issue. Our community is unhealthy. So we need to figure out what to do to try to get people educated on a healthier way of living, a healthier lifestyle. We have too many babies, Black babies, dying twice the rate of white babies. So our infant mortality rate here, there are just so many issues. It's hard to, and you can only, you feel like you're only chipping away a little bit at a time. But that's why it is so important to have elections, and it is so important to have your voice heard. Because if there were more people that thought like me, that were concerned about the number of Black babies dying, that were concerned about how we fund our education system and why there's so many. I toured Arlington High School, broke my heart. But if there were more people who shared my sensibility, then we would be able to make a change. And that's why elections do matter, because you have to educate yourself on who is running, what they stand for, what they are willing to do, and then get a whole bunch of them like that. And then you can start to get things done. But when you have it like we have it here in Indiana, where we're in the super minority, and all we feel like we're doing is chipping away a little bit at a time, but that's better than nothing. But it's hard to see dramatic change when it's just happening a chip at a time. But if we can keep people motivated and keep people engaged and educate them as to why it is important that they take a part in their communities and society, then we can get some of those folks that don't want to represent us, that don't want to support us. We can get them out, get some folk like you and others in, and we can start to see real change more rapidly than just chipping away at it.
I love this conversation because it gives us the opportunity to talk about some of the things that we've seen, that the reason for change, the reason we need change. One of the main things and one of the main reasons, I love having our community conversation is because you take bigger situation and, like Senator Jean said, there's so many issues and we're not going to be able to tackle all of the issues. But I say that on one hand, but on the other hand, it's like, okay, now, and this is kind of like, all right, let's turn the page. The votes are in, now what? So now, like between the people that are on this, like in the panel, and then of course we have a lot of people that are chiming in and answering questions. But I would say that my question really is, so what do we do? What are some, Dee touched on this, what are some tangible action items that we can tangibly do? Because one thing that I am not about is sitting in a room and talking and talking and talking and talking. Amen. And you got all these people talking, and then when it gets time to roll up your sleeves, you turn around and it's like, okay, what are we talking about again? So I think it's important, what can we do? Turn the page and think about tangible action items. I mean, we don't have much time. The conversations always go so fast. So tangibly, what are some action items? And I think each one of us are doing great things in our own circle, but collectively we can do more than individually. So what can we do to help each other, and what are some tangible items? So Dee, go ahead.
I was about to say is, until we address we got to get to the root causes. We got to address the root causes in our communities across the spectrum. And in order to get to the people who's directly impacted the most, you have to work with grassroots organizations and leaders and organizers whose boots on the ground, because they are closest to the pain, closest to the struggles, the disparities as it gets. Everybody has a role to play. And so when as soon as everyone knows their lane and their role and how they can help transition our community out of survival mode into thriving, I mean, it's so many different pieces that we can connect. Not saying that my role is bigger than your role or anyone else's role, but my strength is grassroots leadership, organizing, and working boots on the ground. I have we have the people. We are close to the pain. We know exactly what they need. We know exactly what they don't need. We don't need no one coming in do a 2-year study talking about poverty when we've been living it every single day. And so we can't wait 4 more years. We can't wait 8 more years. We have the highest homicide rate in the midst of a pandemic, and everyone's supposed to be staying indoors. So that speaks to how systemic poverty, and systemic racism plays a huge role into addressing what's going on in our communities. And until we address that as a whole collectively and be on the same page and hold people accountable, because we have to hold, like, for instance, you got a lot of people know I'm very radical, so I ain't gonna say too much, but it's millions of dollars going to traditional organizations, nonprofits, who have no connection to the community, who don't have the capacity to get into the community, who are working remotely from home. Like, what about the folks who don't have internet, Wi-Fi, who don't have television, social media, cell phones, transportation? What about those people? Who's reaching out those populations? And so that's what we try to do as a grassroots organization with the Ross Foundation, is work with those exact populations who's usually forgotten. And usually it's Black and brown people, poor white folks, and veterans. And so we try to stand in that gap as much as possible, but we can't do it alone. It takes a village. Everybody has a role to play. It's different pieces to the puzzle. But and if you have resources and services that you have available or funding to give to grassroots organizations and help us do the work, it doesn't mean that you have to come out here and physically be out here with us, because that's our strength. They may not be your strength, but you may have connections that we may not have that can help us expand our impact.
And one question I would have to that, and it also came up in the chat in a way, is there's so many organizations, and some of the organizations are doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you bring organizations together to focus? Because impact is bigger when it's collective rather than everybody working in silos. And I know I've said that in previous conversations.
Yeah, well, for me, from a grassroots standpoint, my lane is organizing all the grassroots leaders and organizations and getting them on the court. We got grass tops leaders. We have traditional organizations. I'm not saying that none of them are necessary. Everything is necessary. What I'm saying is we cannot continue to just address traditional organizations. We have to also look into addressing non-traditional organizations who do things a little differently, maybe more innovative, and not saying that it's more effective, but we're reaching different populations. If we're trying to serve the entirety of a community, we cannot just continue to work with the same clients. It's new struggles and new issues in the community that those people may not ever walk into your doors. You have to go to them. You have to meet them where they are. And so with that being said, we have to drop egos. We have to swallow our egos, our pride. You got to agree to disagree. It's bigger than us. It's bigger than me and you. It's about saving our community, saving our youth, and transitioning the Black community into liberation.
So I'd like to jump in here. So one of the things that I think is a misnomer is the fact that, I'll put it like this: 28% of roughly the county is poor, considered, are at the poverty level, and then you go you get up to 40% when you start talking about asset limited, income constrained, but employed individuals, so like working poor. when you think about organizations that we have in the community right now, we need way more organizations, not less, doing things. Because when you think about any individual organization, they only have so much capacity. We will never be able to tax our way out of some of the challenges that we have. And so we'll have to rely on the private sector, which is part of the reason why I started a business, because I've worked in government before, and government has its limitations. You need nonprofits, you need the private sector, you need for-profit enterprises creating jobs. And so I think that as Dee has kind of alluded to, I think in terms of systems. And so one of the solutions that's come up is the African American Legacy Fund. That entity is a Black donor advised fund focused on Black philanthropy. The exchange at the Indianapolis Urban League is an effort to produce more leaders that can operate in different boards that are out here. We have problems with just having enough people to be in meetings with other entities that are coming up with plans for the larger city. It ends up being, the same 3 or 4 people in all of these different meetings. And so now I think we need a bunch more leaders. I think we need a bunch more organizations. And I think we do have to consider the fact that entities operate differently. One of the things that the African American Legacy Fund is doing, for example, we're trying to experiment with video grants, because sometimes people just can't, they can say it better than they can put the numbers down and come up with logic models and all that kind of stuff.
That's good.
Compelling story and show you what they're doing, then fund them, And so we do need a different kind of thinking. I like to think in terms of systems. And so I'm kind of, going down that path. And I think the other thing that's been an important policy innovation more recently is the idea of agendas, like Black agendas. So the African American Coalition, they did not create the Black agenda. They created a Black agenda. They created the African, and they operated on it. You've seen a commission of African American males. You're going to hear about a commission on youth, focused on system impacted folks. You saw a bunch of things happen on police reform. Those were all part of a concerted, focused effort where they said, there's a whole bunch of stuff out here, but we're going to focus on these 10 things, and we're going to stay on these 10 things. And we're going to keep on these 10 things. And then once those are done, we'll move to the next. And so I think it's that kind of activity that we need.
Well, and I would like to just give a shout out to Representative Robin Shackelford, who is the chair of the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus. And she is elevating that group to a place that I don't think we've been before, in terms of how we are actually trying to become more engaged and being at the table at some of the decision making about directions that we take in the city and in the state. We've come up with an agenda for police reform, and you'll see and hear about a number of the bills that we'll be carrying to try to address that. We've come up with an agenda for health disparities. There will be a number of bills that you will see this legislative session that try to address health disparities. And Representative Shackelford has been very good at getting us organized so that so that our small voice of, I think we have 13, 14, something like that members, but when you have it organized, and when, as Dee, you said, when folks figure out what lane they're in and what it is they can contribute, and folks start to contribute what they can individually, then it becomes a collective body, and that's much more powerful and has much more of an impact. And I think we're trying to start. I was also at a meeting this morning of Black elected officials here in Marion County, and we are trying to organize ourselves so that we can be a much stronger voice. You have a number of African Americans in this city and leadership, and so our voices are not as loud as they should be, and they're not as engaged as they should be. And I think you're going to start to see some activity on that in the year 2021, and becoming more engaged and trying to find candidates that are of color that can represent particular districts and areas and positions. We're going to try to become more involved from a policy standpoint in terms of taking positions on things that are happening in the city, so that we can try to represent what we believe the people that are live in our districts would want us to how they would want us to represent. So I think that this whole Floyd and Black Lives Matter is really motivated and energized Black leaders all across the spectrum, in terms of whether they're in elected office like me, or whether they're grassroots like Dee, or whether they're systems and corporate like Marshawn, or in the media like Amelia. I think we've all gotten energized, and we're looking at what lane we're in and what can we contribute from the lane that we're in. And then Dee, I think it is important for us to, once we've identified our lane, try to see who we can partner with to make those lanes even bigger, stronger, and more impactful.
And I just want to say one thing before we move on is there's also a generational gap between the elders and the younger people. And we oftentimes talk about diversity in elected officials with race, but we never talk about it with age. We're living in a new time of day, and some of the young people these days have some of the best innovative ideas, but they are never given a chance. Usually they are told to wait their turn, or they're not qualified or not welcome. And so we got to do better at becoming more diverse across the spectrum, making sure young people have the same opportunities as people of age to get into elected seats, and making sure that we have a diverse representation, because a lot of issues that are facing our young people, uh, you know, sometimes that's probably why some of these young people don't show up to vote, is because they don't see no one that looks like them, who don't relate to them, who don't understand their pain, their direct needs. And so we do have to also consider having more young people at the table, and also passing the baton.
And
I think I just wanted to.
Can I just say something real quickly? I would agree with that, but also don't dismiss wisdom. There's great value in wisdom.
Yes, absolutely. You got to be willing to learn and grow, and just work together. We can learn from each other. Everyone has something we can learn from.
Amelia,
I
you
think
wanted to say something? Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I think just moving forward to accountability is going to be really important. What I worry about as a just passive observer and a lot of events is I usually see, I mean, certainly not comparable to what took place with George Floyd this year, but these events that kind of activate people, and they show up in droves to meetings, and they comment and they stand in line and all this stuff. And then as soon as those issues kind of fade out, and the TV, the media is not there to keep track, they're not attracted to, smaller and smaller crowds. I can't control all the media outlets, but I think as a public, if folks really want to see change, I think what helps is the numbers that folks come out, either when they were walking out around the circle at night, or at the city council meetings, and also the number of, I don't know if white ally is a term, but those folks that came out in droves also kind of help increase attention from the media on accountability basis as well. And then personally, as a reporter, in the media landscape, this kind of has forced us to reflect on ourselves and our diversity. But I think what's equally as important is, and this is challenging because newspapers are dying, and there's fewer and fewer staff, but we're naturally transient by nature. So I've worked in 3 different states at this point, and I've stayed 2 or 3 years. And I think what the industry needs to more connect with the communities is people who are born and raised here. If I was a local high school graduate, I'd know all the issues, I'd know all the roads. I'm still using, Google Maps to get around. And I just also we had this conversation on our diversity committee in our newsroom, approaching communities of color, not in a one and done, there was a drive-by shooting in your neighborhood, let's swarm, let's bring the cameras, let's bring the photographer, and then let's just get out. but being there before that shooting and being there afterwards, to really understand all of the issues. That's what I've kind of tried to do as a reporter, at least in the educational space. Why are Black male students being disciplined at a higher rate?
That's right.
Why are they, facing all of these? Why are they making up the most? They're the majority of our behavioral schools in Vegas. They were, yet a minority in the district as a whole. So I think as the media, we need to, as reporters, kind of approach it that way, as in, I'm going to be here for a long time, even if you're not going to be, and just treat it like this is a community I was born and raised in, even though you're not. And then really get to know, before the pandemic hit, I drove around this gentleman who was from Brightwood, I guess born and raised. We drove around the better half of the afternoon, so I could just see, and it was great. It was a great tour. He took me to like an auntie's house, and he took me to a single mom's house, and that way I could see, if I'm just reading, food desert or crime, or the bus doesn't stop here frequently enough, like I'm just putting that on paper at my desk, right? But if you're at the streets and you're getting to know people, I think that's more of what we need to do as a media landscape, at least. That's pretty exclusive, but that's what I've been grappling with as a reporter.
I like that because I listen to NPR a lot, and some of the stories that have captured my attention, one in particular that jumps out at me is they followed this young woman who was a high school student and became a mother. And they followed her from towards the end of her pregnancy, before giving birth, to after giving birth, to her actually being a mother and having to take care of this child as a teenager, and just all of the challenges that she now realized were facing her now that she had this baby, and decisions that she had to make, places that she couldn't go that her friends were going, and it was just really a great insight into, and it was longitudinal. They didn't just go in and one time an interview her and leave. They stayed with her, and it gave me, the viewer, an opportunity to get to know and understand and kind of realize what she was going. It was I think that's a great idea. If you can somehow or another get that as a way of reporting, I think that would do really well. And it would also expose a lot of challenges that communities have. And I think the reason why the Black Lives Matter has gotten such momentum is because there's no way for folks who are not Black to deny that this is happening to a race, that they are being systematically killed one by one by officers who are trained to who are trained to protect, and who are actually causing harm. And so when it became exposed and it was so graphic, you can't deny it. And so therefore people now realize, those that have a conscience and those that care realize, hey, something needs to be done about this. And I think that was part of why there was so much momentum with the Black Lives Matters. It's that people who were not Black joined us because they saw for themselves that Black folks are being killed every day by people who are supposed to be trained to protect and serve.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a whole nother conversation that we would we would need the full hour and a half just to cover that.
Now, we wanted to bring Alex. Alex, we see you over there. Just drawing away, and
nice.
And we see it coming together over there. Can you kind of give us a glimpse of what you're working with over there? With
I can. I'm almost done. I still need to do some detail work, but I'm trying to zoom in here. That's kind of what it looks like all together.
That's nice. So that's Martin Luther King and Malcolm X.
Yep. My concept was to kind of, illustrate individuals from past to present who
Biden and Kamala. Oh, that's great.
Right. Yeah. Who are, are in who literally, they've chosen to, dedicate their lives to, help others, help with, what's going on in the world right now. And just to bring hope to people and, just kind of laying it all out there.
And you,
Whether or not
you're doing this from your mind's eye. You don't have any photos that you're using to.
I have photos. I'm not that good, so I need reference photos. But
so who's that with the microphone? Is that Shirley Chisholm or?
On the bottom, the green shirt, Stacey Abrams.
Oh, Stacey Abrams.
Mhm.
Okay. Wow.
So we're gonna have Alex. We're gonna be able to feature this at Tease Me, right?
Yes, for sure.
And that's the guy on the knee was Kilpatrick, or what's his name?
Kaepernick.
Kaepernick.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
guys. So this is looking really nice, Alex. Like for real.
Thank you, Alex.
So
thank you.
Very
and that
happy.
really does tell a story, Alex. You tell the story through your art. That's wonderful. That's great.
And so now we are approaching our end time. However, we have a steady following of about 25 plus followers right now in our segment, and they're asking the question, and I think this is a good time for us to say, what are like 2 or 3 things then that we need to do to actually collaborate, shift the culture, and go from conversation to actual impact. And on top of that, those who are watching right now, those who are viewing right now, please go ahead and put your comments, your thoughts as well in terms of what we can do to actually have some action. This is exactly where we're at. Action. Okay, because here's the thing. What we've learned is, yes, we have some folks who are very informed of the political scene and the information. However, I think this year more than ever, we actually learned what is your power in voting as a citizen. And I felt it, this year. But as a citizen, we have, for one, we got to take on some action just as citizens. But that's just, again, that's me. Panel 2 or 3 things what you feel like we can actively do in a tangible way that we can start to put our hands on a consistent basis.
And can I just chime in real quick? Yep. We only have 12 minutes left before we can jump off. So if everybody can have about 2 minutes just to kind of go through, and we can take a list, and of course they're going to have it on the chat as well, but that way everybody gets a chance to talk before we jump off.
So a couple things. First, I think the most important question I think you can ask elected officials moving forward now is, what is their Black agenda? You need to be asking that of Black politicians and white politicians as well. Everyone needs to have a Black agenda. Beyond that, one of the more immediate things that's going to happen inside of the next 10 days is the next round of community conversations. The last time we did this, we got implicit bias training, de-escalation training. We got the body cameras put into the budget, and a number of other police reforms. We're going to do it again. And so I don't want people to think, nothing's going to happen, because we got policy things out of that. But the other piece of it is we're hurting and we do need to heal. And so part of it is we need a cathartic release. Folks need to have the opportunity to tell their truth. And so community conversations, asking the question, politicians about their Black agenda, and then realizing that voting was the first thing. Now you have to show up to meetings to testify. You have to reach out to your elected officials and tell them where you stand on certain things. And so the City County Council will be releasing the information about how they're going to do the Zoom chats. There'll be Zoom chats, but that's coming.
Well, and I'll just piggyback on that. There was, after Trump was elected, I like to tell stories. After Trump was elected, and there were all these protests, some very conservative legislators in the Indiana Senate decided they were going to put a bill that would allow police officers, when people gathered to protest, as they were doing, that the police officers could break up the protest using any means necessary. Well, that just really harkened back to the civil rights era, where they would just bring out the dogs and the water hoses, and people were just livid, and it started spreading out all over social media. And so many people packed the committee room where that bill was being heard, that there was an overflow room. They had to have 2 overflow rooms. So many people came to protest and to object to that piece of legislation that they were successful in getting it killed. That bill did not even get heard in the committee. So that just shows the power. Once again, if we didn't see the power of the vote and the power of people participating in this election, then I'm here to tell you that it also makes a difference at the state level. And so I would just encourage folks to follow the legislature. As Marshawn said, make sure you know what bills your legislators are carrying, black or white, that have a black agenda associated with it. Follow that bill. And if it's successful in getting a hearing, come down and get your friends and your family and as many people as you can to come down and either show your support or your opposition, whatever it is. But come down. It doesn't stop on November 3rd. It's a continuous participation that we have to do in order to really be have our voices and our agenda moved forward in the way we want.
I would chalk it up to several things that I would never think I would recommend, but given where we are as a country, it's pretty simple. I would just say, think for yourself, read what's going on around you locally, whether that's the Indianapolis Recorder, if you want to watch TV, the TV news stations, the Indy Star. Don't get your info from what someone said on Twitter or something. Just be actively, read, think for yourself. I would say also social media, it just consumes so much of our time, and you can post your opinions on social all you want, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. But then people are going to fight with you. You're going to end up down this spiraling, hole, and then nothing's going to get accomplished. So I would just say stay out of social media and be willing to engage with the other side. Stay on social media with fighting folks. If you want to fight folks, if there's, inner party fighting, or, someone down the street from you doesn't see the same way, or you don't like the same, politician, then be willing to engage with them, but do it face to face. I think we're so divisive right now as a country that we really need to just stop fighting each other online on Facebook, and just put the phone down and have a conversation and be willing to talk to the other side, whatever that other side is. And I think maybe hopefully then with those 3 or 4 things, we can, have a more engaged citizenry.
Thank you, Amelia. Mr. Ross.
Yes. There's a couple things I think moving forward we can do is, number one is we have to start grooming and vetting our next generation of candidates right now. We need to figure out who's going to be that next prosecutor, who's going to be that next judge, who's going to be the potential next mayor or city councilor or state rep or senator or congressman or whatever that is. We need to start intentionally coming together and vetting what that looks like. And so only then, I think a Black agenda would be impactful when you have candidates who won't switch up when they get in there, who won't get bought or sell out. You got to have candidates who's going to fight for our community, who's going to put people over politics. That's where we at today. In today's time, that's what people want to see, is people who care about the community, who's willing to come and meet people where they are. And then another thing is we have to get involved with grassroots organizations, and we have to recognize that they are the closest to the pain. If we really want to get to a point where we're addressing the root causes and get into a position where we could heal, well, we have to get involved with who's boots on the ground, who's actually going door to door in the middle of a pandemic, engaging the residents, engaging the community, who's having conversations with the community. Get involved with them, figure out who they are in your community, If you don't have one, then create something on your own. It takes the community to save the community, and so don't think you have to create a nonprofit to make a difference. Don't think you have to run for office to make a difference. You could just be a resident, a neighbor who's concerned about their community, who you can have a voice. And so it's just a simple thing. It's just so many things I believe that we need to work towards. And the last thing I'll leave on is legislation towards making sure every community has the basic needs. Um, and when I say that, around affordable housing, healthcare, food, quality education, and so on. We need to make sure that impoverished communities have all of the basic needs. So they won't be worrying about all these systemic barriers and challenges, and they could focus on voting, voting education, going to meetings. They're not going to no community meetings if they got to worry about putting food on their table. If they got to worry about finding livable wages and only making minimum wage. These are some of the barriers that's causing people not to be able to focus or do their research on what's out there available for them. And so I think when we eliminate systemic barriers, improve the economics in the Black community, improve the racial equity and quality gap, then we can start to actually heal.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as I'm sitting here and I'm hearing you guys and hearing response, and I'm watching what's being posted on our chat. A lot of questions. Shout out to Lana Moore, working with Ladies Under Construction. She's been giving a lot of great questions here, and I think ultimately, man, guys, we have to find a way to positively get angry. And I say that because now we're in a place where we do have a lot of new elected officials. Congratulations, elected officials. But now it's time to go to work. And how do we hold them accountable to a new standard of being credible? As Mr. Marshawn would say, that equity piece. And I've known Marshawn since, oh my God, since 2001, one of the first. Actually, my hat's off to you, sir. I always got to tell the story. I would not probably be having this conversation had I not crossed his path at IU. And he said, "Hey, what you doing right now?" "Oh, I'm about to go to my dorm. We got a Black Student Union meeting tonight at 7 o'clock. Come on." And I didn't stop. And so I'm always forever grateful because even on a collegiate level, we were able to see that we have a place at the table right here, right now, right here, right now. And so I think we got to get angry because again, somebody I said it jokingly, um, but I said something about Donald Trump. There was a lot to learn about that. Whether you like him or not, there was a lot to learn because you got to ask yourself when you have lost over 200,000 people, and that's just the COVID. That doesn't mean that it hasn't even included the violence, this, that, and other. Just COVID, and still able to get over 70 million people to believe in this person. What is that? That's scary. One of my friends just told me down in Florida, they were thinking about if you're out here protesting, giving people the permission just to go ahead and shoot down people. That's the times that we're living in. So I know this might seem like just a conversation and this, that, and the other, but again, it is a start. It's an effort to say, hey, I miss seeing you guys. I miss talking to somebody. I miss being able to build. And if we got to Zoom our way through this, if we got to uh, put on plastic coverings, this, that, but we got to get to each other and we have to believe in each other for humanity's sake again.
Well, and I would like to extend an offer to sit down with Dee. I'm on the east side. You're on the east side. You're grassroots. I'm in the state house. Perhaps we can partner together.
And one thing that I first off just want to say thank everybody for coming out. It is after 8:30, but I just want to make sure that you guys know we really appreciate you taking the time and for us to be able to have this conversation. Got a lot of, like Eric said, there's a lot of great comments on the side. So feel free to get up on Facebook and you can just scroll through and rewatch the conversation. But one thing that I am thinking about, and one thing that I would love to do is, we've had a lot of great panelists, young and old, and far in between. I think it would be cool to be able to, and Eric, I don't know, Dee, you might have to lead this, and that's what you do. You organize, so you're gonna organize. But I think it'd be a cool conversation to have with all of the people that have been panelists. And then a lot of people, I ask people on the chat, like, if you're interested in getting involved, send us an email to info@teasmeindy.com. But that's how you collectively are able to bring people together and really pool something. We all have the same energy. We all want to make a change. We want to make a difference. Impact is the word of, I think, the century, and how we can make an impact. So I think that is the next step. I know for myself, I want to make sure that we get the conversation going, that we zoom it out, do what we have to do, and then we get out and we have an action plan to follow through with.
Well, I think I've enjoyed this conversation. I think it shows that we have folks on here from different lanes, but we were all able to pull our conversation together to make the lane bigger, to make the conversation broader. I think
absolutely. And we're going to grow these conversations with our community. Thank you all so much. Alex, if you could just hold your picture at one time so our viewers can see it as we begin to close. Thank you guys so much again for your input. And we really, we're pulling for you and the work that you do moving forward in the community. Be empowered and be the difference as you guys continue to be. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tamika.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All righty. Bye. Thanks for having me.
Have a great weekend.
Alex, is that painting for sale?
Nope.
It's really good.
To make you want. No. we have to feature it. So all of our artwork has been featured at Tease Me. So if you go to Tease Me, they're all on the wall.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the things I love about Tease Me, is that you have local artists on your wall and musician. I mean, it's a wonderful place. It's a cool place.
Wonderful place on 22nd
Hey, shout
in Delaware.
out to Tamika.
Bye, y'all.